The discrepancy between the critic score and the audience score for this show is crazy. Actually, it's quite surprising because I feel as though the critics have been overly harsh on Taylor Sheridan lately because he's one of the few writer-directors in Hollywood who does lean away from the left-wing echo chamber nonsense. They're the ones that are loving this series, and the fans are the ones taking issue with it. Wild times we're living in. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you're new, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into 1923 Season 2. In all fairness to the critics, who I more times than not disagree with, and whose bars I think are set way too high for most movies and television series, I tend to agree with them on this one. Listen, I didn't love Season 2 of 1923. I thought it was a pretty severe drop-off in quality from Season 1, which I consider one of the best seasons of television in this universe. But I think the audience is being way too critical for this series as a whole. It doesn't match the brilliance of 1883, but it is certainly better than Yellowstone's full run. My issue with Season 2 isn't that it's bad. In terms of writing, production quality, performances, etc., it's far better than a lot of series on TV right now. My issue with Season 2 is that it's just not very entertaining. There is just a whole lot of nothing. After the end of Season 1, everyone sort of had the same concern, which was, I really hope they don't spend the entire season having Spencer find his way back home, only to be reunited with his family in the final minutes of the final episode, forcing it to abruptly come to an unsatisfying and rushed conclusion. And that is exactly what happened. There is also a problem with believability this season. It never gets to the insanely ridiculous level of Yellowstone, with the office bombings that have just no repercussions whatsoever. But Spencer is Superman, essentially. So let's talk about the narrative. A lot, and I mean a lot, of this season feels like filler. The main focus is Spencer. He is the hero of the story. He is destined to return home and save his family's ranch from being overtaken by Whitfield and his men. And it took 8 episodes to get there. And while Spencer's little adventure isn't dull at all, it's actually enjoyable for the most part. Back at the ranch and around Bozeman, there is really nothing for the other characters to do because they're just waiting. Whitfield is plotting with investors to build a massive ski resort on the Duttons' land, and we see the ranchers just go about their everyday tasks, surviving the harsh winter, and whatnot. And that's about it. The entire season, Whitfield is plotting but decides not to attack until Spencer's almost home. Why? I guess because of the winter, but there's spruce throughout the episodes. He's driving around with Banner in the dead of winter, like it's not a problem. Even if Spencer is this unstoppable force, why would you wait until he's almost home to risk it? When we move away from Spencer's story, there's just a whole lot of meandering and not really any plot progression. Which is unfortunate because I think there could have been a lot of things Sheridan and his team could have fleshed out. Now, the other 2 storylines aren't bad when we focus on Alex and on Tiona's journeys. Alex is trying to make her way to and across America to Bozeman so she can reunite with Spencer. It really is a compelling look at the hardships that immigrants back in this time faced when migrating to this country. And I just think Tiona's story is super interesting. She's a wanted woman on the run trying to start a new life, being hunted. Not to mention the constant debating of morality between Renaud and Kent is also intriguing. But this storyline oftentimes feels like an afterthought because so much time is dedicated to the Duttons. I understand what Sheridan wants to do here. Chief Rainwater is a driving force in Yellowstone and in this universe, and Sheridan wants to give us a look into his past, and that of his ancestors like Tiona, and show us where their strength of their tribe and their family all began. And their narrative has been so closely tied to the Duttons' narrative that it makes a lot of sense. But there just isn't enough time dedicated to Tiona's story, and I almost feel like if Sheridan would have crafted another spin-off solely focused on the Rainwaters' history, that would have been a better route. And Whitfield, great villain, just does a lot of standing around and doing weird shit this season. This character could have used more focus as well. Now, to address the suspension of belief issue. These stories exist in the real world that we all reside in. And Yellowstone, in its later seasons, encountered this problem where it just went off the rails in terms of believability. The characters and stories started doing things that the audience would just balk at because it became so unrealistic that it was essentially just a fantasy. 1883 and 1923 have avoided that issue mostly, except for Spencer in this season. Look, I love Spencer. He's a stoic, hardened, skilled, formidable, everyman hero that everybody loves, and Brandon Sklenar is fantastic in this role. Honestly, this dude's career is about to take off. That being said, Spencer does so much shit this season that is just ridiculous, and Sheridan basically makes him into an invincible superhuman. He leaps from a train multiple times, just unscathed, not breaking stride, and he finally arrives on the ranch and just takes out like 10 dudes no problem, even though all of the ranch hands and Kara had spent hours just trying to fend them off from getting inside the house. The thing that really anchors this season is the performances. Of course, we have Ford and Mirren back, who are just both legends of the game, and both phenomenal in these roles. I know he's like 80 at this point, but I really wish Harrison Ford would do more westerns. He's just got the bones for it. Brandon Sklenar, as I already mentioned, is a star in the making, and Timothy Dalton as Whitfield is probably my favorite villain in this universe. He's just so eccentric and devious and just weird as hell, and I love it. Honestly, I think this series would have benefited from being one season longer. Maybe have this season be what it is, except Whitfield survives and succeeds in beginning construction on his resort. Then season 3 is just the all-out war between these two sides, with Spencer back leading the Duttons. It would have allowed Sheridan to focus more time on the other interesting characters in this series. That being said, what we got isn't terrible. It was still very enjoyable despite being a drop-off in quality from season 1. And look, I still respect Sheridan. I think overall he's a very good writer. I just think lately he's written himself into a few corners that he hasn't been able to write himself out of. 1923 is over, but 1944 is on the horizon. A Western with World War II unfolding in the background? Count me in.